Testing, 1 2 1 2. Testing, 1 2 1 2. All right. Shalom, shalom. All right. First and foremost, I want to give all praise and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Harachakodash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone, from whom I learned the truth from. And also peace and salutations to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. All right. Shabbat shalom. Okay. We the Hebrew Israelites. We come out on the streets of America, known as Babylon the Great, according to Bible prophecy. And as well, we have like-minded brothers throughout the four corners of the earth. Okay. For the risen up for the purpose of what? Okay, risen up through the Holy Spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'ashem Shai, which Yahweh is the name of the Heavenly Father, whom this world calls God, and Yahweh Shai is the name of, the begotten Son of the Heavenly Father, whom this world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. Okay, and it's the Heavenly Father, Yahweh Ba'ashem Shai, that has raised up, us, the hopeful elect, the remnant of the nation of Israel. Okay, starting with the apostles and the bishops and the elders of Great Millstone, as well as the beloved men who labor before them, all the way down to the rest of us that are of the hopeful elect. Okay, he's raised us up for the purpose of what? To preach and prophesy the downfall and the destruction of America, known as Babylon the Great, according to the Holy Bible, and as well to preach, the second coming of Yahweh Shai, whom this world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, to come back, in an angelic, heavenly power, in, chariots, according to the Bible, with the so-called white man Esau, Edom calls UFOs, which they're really the chariots of Israel, according to the Bible, and we preach that Yahweh Shai, he's going to come back with the holy angels, the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of holy angels from the heavens to come back and take down the rulership of these heathen nations, starting with the rulership of Esau, Edom, who rules over this beast system known as America, along with NATO and the EU, his European allies. The Lord Yahweh Shai is getting ready to come back and take down the rulership of these heathen nations, and as well deliver his elect, deliver his elect from amongst the midst of these heathen nations throughout the four corners of the earth, wherever they may be, wherever they may be scattered at in these outer days. Lord will not be of that number, and so as always, let's start off in 2nd Ezra 15. 2nd Ezra chapter 15 and verse 1, it says, "Behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in thy mouth, saith the Lord, and cause them to be written in paper, they are faithful and true." And the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Shai has most certainly put the words of prophecy in the mouth of his prophets, his men, his apostles in these outer days. Going back to the apostles and bishops of Great Millstone, as well as the beloved men who labor before them, going back to Abba Bivens. The Lord, during the late 60s, early 1970s, sent down the Holy Spirit, to the remnant of our people, starting with our beloved forefather Abba Bivens, to go out and preach and prophesy this word, wake up the dry bones, wake up the elect out of that dry bone, spiritually dead, ignorant state, to come back to Yahweh Ba'ashem Shai, and of course, our forefather Abba Bivens went on to teach, the heads of One West, who went on to teach the apostles of Great Millstone, from whom I learned the truth from, who eventually got on the internet around 2007-ish, uploading videos and lessons on the internet to eventually wake up the rest of us that are of the hopeful, up to this very time in 2025. Lord will not be at that number, and all of this is being done through prophecy being preached and spoken and come to pass on the earth, and it says, 2nd Ezra 15 verse 1, "Speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in thy mouth, said the Lord, and cause them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true." And when it's all said and done, the words of Yahweh Shema Shai, according to the Holy Bible, according to the scriptures, are going to be found faithful and true. Okay? The destruction of America, Babylon the Great, the deliverance of the elect, okay? The elect of the nation of Israel, so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, okay? The downfall and destruction of the rest of these heathen nations, the destruction of the NWO system that Esau's trying to set up in the earth in these latter days, the destruction of the Charagma, and all these wicked inventions that these heathen are setting up in the earth in these outer days. All right, as a matter of fact, I was even looking online, and as of lately, China has officially launched, 6G technology. Okay, China. As a matter of fact, let's see if we can get some information on that. All right, so it says, this is off of Google. I just typed in China 6G and just to see what will come up. And so this is the response from the Google AI overview. It says, China is aggressively pursuing a leading role in 6G technology, aiming for commercialization by 2030. See that? And investing heavily in research, development, and infrastructure. Okay, so China, all right, especially over these past recent years, has, aggressively been moving towards 6G technology. And I believe as of lately, they already launched it. Okay, they first launched it. All right. And you notice, as I said, I'm going to read this again. China is aggressively pursuing a leading role in 6G technology, aiming for commercialization by 2030. So you see that? And so notice over these past recent years, hearing out of the mouth of these elite Edomites and these high-level Edomites, guys by the likes of Yuval Noah Harari, okay, K. Schwab, the former director of the WEF, the WEF, okay, even out of the mouth of guys like E. Musk, okay, and Gil Bates. You notice over these past recent years, they've been talking about this whole 2030 agenda. Well, basically by the year 2030, they basically want to come down with the NWO system. All right, they want to come down with the Charagma. And I believe as of recently, even at this guy, RFK, talking about by the year 2030, he wants to see pretty much all Americans, wearing, trackable, traceable health technology, basically. Okay. And we all know that's what that's leading up to, the MOTB, Revelation 13, verse 16. All right. And so far as we see, China is speedily heading down that path. Okay, the whole 2030 agenda, the Charagma, all right, because you already have social credit score system going on out there in China, all right, and so China is basically, damn near right there from implementing the Charagma officially. You see that? And the United States is not far behind that. Okay, the United States, NATO, and the EU aren't far behind 6G technology, issuing the Charagma, the whole 2030 agenda, all right. And it says, it continues to say, the country has conducted the world's first 6G test satellite and is developing advanced chips aiming to leverage its expertise in 5G to dominate the next generation of connectivity. See that? So China has already launched 6G technology, okay, and as well, increasing their chip productions. Because what? All right, they're doing the bidding of the elites in one way, shape, or another. All right, because just like Esau here in America, as well as the NATO and EU, are doing the bidding of the elites, moving towards this very agenda, 6G technology, the Charagma, linking man with machine. Well, we see China is on that same path as well. Okay, but all these things, okay, all these things are just all a part of, all right, all these things are just all speaking to how these heathen nations are moving forward more and more with the NWO agenda, okay, a one world system. And as it speaks of right here, In Psalms, the second chapter, Psalms chapter 2, verse 1, it says, "Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing?" All right. And what is the vain thing that these heathen are imagining in these latter days? A one world governing system, an NWO system, linking man with technology, pseudoscience, okay, to basically establish Satan's kingdom all over the earth again, okay, to establish, all right, a digital Tower of Babel. You see that? But it says, verse 2, the kings of the earth set themselves, all right, and who are the kings of the earth? The different rulers and presidents and you know, rulers of these heathen nations. Your Xi Pings, your Kim, what's the name? The guy over there in Korea, or Kim Jong Un, I believe his name. All right, his name kind of slipped my mind, but Vladimir Putin, okay, and even DJ Donald Trump. All right, he's in the mix of that as well. All right, ushering Babylon the Great America into the NWO system, slowly but surely. It says, verse 2 again, Psalms 2, verse 2, the kings of the earth set themselves and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord Yahweh, against the Lord Yahweh, and against his anointed. Right? So that these heathen are setting themselves up against Yahweh Shai at an all-time high. Saying what? Verse 3, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. And when you read verse 3 in the NLT, it basically speaks to how these heathen, starting with their leaders and their elites, are basically trying to trying to separate themselves from the judgment of Yahweh Shai. Because these heathen, especially their elites, their upper elites that you never hear about, they know and understand the judgment that's written for them according to prophecy. Okay? They know that the Lord's getting ready to come back, all right, and take down their rulerships, set up the elect of the nation of Israel, the tabernacle of David, to put these heathen in slavery. Okay? They understand the judgment that's written according to the scriptures. And it says, verse 4, he that sitteth in the heaven shall laugh, the Lord shall have them in derision. Because as these heathen are going forward with their NWO system, their one world system, the Lord is looking down upon them and laughing at them. All right, they really and truly believe, as it speaks of in Psalm 64, they encourage themselves in the evil matter. They really and truly, all right, these heathen really believe that they can somehow fight against and combat the power of Yahweh Shai. They really and truly believe that they can fight against the invisible power of the scriptures. All right, the Most High Yahweh through the begotten Son Yahweh Shai. They really and truly believe they can combat, okay, the Lord who's a man of war, as it speaks of in Exodus. All right. It says, verse 5, then shall he speak unto them in his wrath, and vex them in his sore displeasure. Verse 6, yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. The Lord has said unto me, thou art my son. This day have I begotten thee. So when it's all said and done, all right, as these heathen are trying to go forward with the NWO agenda, all this technology, 6G technology, 5G technology, the Paragma, okay, mass AI, mass surveillance everywhere, all right, they're trying to implement all these things in the earth, okay, to basically, root Yahweh Shai out of the earth, okay, and that's a form of them crucifying Yahweh Shai, all right, in a spiritual sense, okay, trying to exile Yahweh Shai out of the earth and set themselves up as gods over the earth through pseudoscience technology, carnal means, all right, and you even have these heathen now trying to tap into immortality, okay, because they know that we Israelites, all right, starting with us, the hopeful elect, are promised immortality according to the scriptures, along with the new bodies and everything. But these heathen, starting with Esau, Edom, they're trying to tap into immortality. All right, they're trying to ultimately get the birthright back, as well as the blessing. Okay, but what does the scripture say? Also in the book of Psalms. All right, as the kings of the earth set themselves in array, as it said in Psalms 2, right? What does prophecy also say about these different kings and of these heathen throughout the earth? All right, this is Psalms chapter 149 and verse 4. It says, and the Lord taketh pleasure in his people. All right, who is the Lord's people? So-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, the true Israelites of the earth. All right, starting with us, the hopeful elect, the remnant. It says, Psalms 149, verse 4, for the Lord Yahweh Shema Shai taketh pleasure in his people, he will beautify the meek with salvation. Okay, so it's going into salvation. All right, the Lord's going to beautify the meek of his people with salvation, and that's us, the hopeful elect, the remnant. It says, verse 5, let the saints be joyful in glory, let them sing aloud upon their beds. And in the previous chapter, Psalm 148, and verse 14, it tells you who the saints are, the Israelites. Okay, it says, verse 5 again, let the saints be joyful in glory, let them sing aloud upon their beds. Verse 6, let the higher praises of Yahweh Shema Shai be in their mouth, and a two-edged sword in their hand. Okay, to do what? Verse 7, to execute vengeance upon the heathen and punishments upon the people. So you see that? So the Lord's getting ready to set up his people, starting with us, the hopeful elect, back into power. Okay, under his begotten son Yahweh Shai. All right, to execute vengeance upon these heathen. All right, punishments upon these heathen nations, starting with Esau, Edom. Okay, to rule over them with the rod of iron. All right, through hardcore slavery in the kingdom of heaven. Okay, forcing them to keep the laws and the commandments in the high holy days in the Shabbat, forcing them to observe and practice a dietary law. Okay, no more idol worship is going to be practiced in the kingdom of heaven. All right, because even it speaks about in Wisdom of Solomon 14, in these outer days, the Lord is going to bring a visitation upon the idols of the heathen. You see that? Starting with this Jesus Christ character, so-called white Jesus that's being worshipped in the Christian church as well as the Catholic church. Okay, and Christianity is being cast down more and more as we get closer to Jacob's trouble and ultimately closer to Yahweh Shai coming back. The Christian and Catholic church is being cast down more and more. All right, and hey, as a matter of fact, even as the title of this camp goes, which I'm gonna go into Daniel 5 in a little bit, but the writing on the wall, okay, the writing is on the wall, not only upon Babylon the Great America, as well as Edomite supremacy as a whole throughout the earth, but the writing on the wall is even showcasing itself upon a Christian church. Okay, Christianity is through, the Catholic Church is through, and that's why in these outer days, you see a lot of these so-called Christians popping up all throughout the internet, with these platforms and these podcasts and whatnot, trying to act like they're going into prophecy, trying to act like they're trying to break down what Babylon the Great is, what the beast is, and all these things, which all these things have been broken down already by, the apostles and the bishops and the elders of Great Millstone, okay, down to the least of us that are of the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, But these Christians are now trying to, tap into prophecy and act like they're all into prophecy and act like they've been breaking the scriptures down forever, okay? When they're all just a bunch of hypocrites at the end of the day, because what they see their church attendance is declining more and more. Nobody wants to hear that Christianity nonsense more anymore. Okay, so now they're trying to call themselves getting serious about the Bible to try to gain followers again, try to increase their church attendance again, all for the purpose of trying to make money again, to live comfortably here in Babylon the Great again. All right. Because the Christian church is not rooted in prophecy, okay? And they're not rooted in Yahweh Shema Shai at the end of the day, all right? So, matter of fact, let's go back. Right. All right, let's go back to 2 Ezra 15 real quick. Second Ezra 15 and verse 1, it says, behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in thy mouth, saith the Lord, and cause them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true. The words of Yahweh Shema Shai, when it's all said and done, are going to be found faithful and true. Because what? We have a more sure word of prophecy, as it speaks of in Peter's, okay? And as well, like it speaks of in Habakkuk 2, the vision is set for an appointed time, though it tarry, wait for it, because it, will surely come to pass. And at the end, it will speak and not tarry, roughly paraphrasing it. Okay. And so As the men of the Lord will be preaching and prophesying throughout the four corners of the earth, singing a new song, chanting down Babylon the Great, chanting down Edomite supremacy, and chanting down the rulership of these heathen nations. It says in verse 3, fear not the imaginations against thee, let not the incredulity of them trouble thee that speak against thee, for all the unfaithful shall die in their unfaithfulness. Yep, and especially the unfaithful amongst our people, the 2/3 of our people. Okay, that's all over the internet, all over TikTok, all over social media. All right, because here it is, as Esau is getting caught and exposed left and right more and more, especially as of 2025. All right, ever since Trump got back in office, all right, ever since the whole ordeal with the Epstein files came back up again, all right, as Esau's getting caught out there and exposed, all right, and made bare more and more left and right, especially as of 2025, all right. Yeah, you still have, many of our people that's all over the internet, all over TikTok and social media, still looking at the Israelites as the problem of the earth, claiming that we're preaching hate speech and all, and racism and all these things. Which 2/3 of our people, especially these Black and Latino and Native American Christians, they have no idea what hate is, okay, or what love is, and they most certainly have no idea what the understanding of racism is, because racism just simply means, when you break down the word, it just means to be for your race or to advocate for your race, your seed line of people, the people that you descend from. Okay, that's all racism means. All right, and then with this whole deal of hate speech and all these things. Okay, well, first and foremost, look at what some of the things the Christian church teaches. They teach that, number one, the laws of the Heavenly Father are done away with in the scriptures. All right, you can do whatever you want, you can eat whatever you want, and then at the same time, they also teach that that if you die, when you die and you've been a so-called wicked person on the earth, or you so-called burn in a place called hell forever. Okay, not is that not hate speech right there? Okay, because first and foremost, if you teach a doctrine that the laws of the Heavenly Father are just completely done away with, and that we don't have to keep the laws, all we have to do is just believe on Jesus, and we can make it to heaven. Well, first and foremost, are you telling me, a person can go out and commit murder, commit adultery, steal from people, lie to people, worship idols, okay, and still make it into the kingdom of heaven as long as they call on Jesus? All right, absolutely not, according to the scriptures. All right, and even with this whole ordeal of the so-called hell doctrine, okay, first and foremost, the scripture says this. All right, the scripture says the Most High's anger doesn't endure forever. Let's see. Yep, this is Psalms, real quick. Book of Psalms, chapter 30 and verse 5. It says, "For his anger endureth but for a moment. In his favor is life." You see that? And that's what we Israelites, all right, especially we that are the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, that's what we're preaching at the end of the day. Okay, we're preaching for the Lord to come back and take down the wicked rulerships of these heathen nations, take down Babylon, the great America, okay, and restore life on the earth again, to renew this earth in righteousness, okay, according to the laws and the commandments, to clean up the air, to clean up the waters, okay, to restore the animals back to their natural habitats so that they can do their job in the ecosystem, okay, to preserve the life of bees in the earth. You see that? Because under this wicked rulership of Esau, Edom, all right, bees are going extinct, okay? And mind you, this is all happening under the nose of over 2 billion Christians in the earth, all right? These same Christians that claim that we're preaching a bunch of hate speech and this and the third. What? Meanwhile, look at the earth under their nose, okay, under the so-called love of Jesus that these Christians are preaching. You see that? But it says again, Psalms 30 verse 5, "For his anger endureth but for a moment, in his favor is life. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning." So the main point in this verse, as it said, for his anger endureth but for a moment. The Most High's anger doesn't last forever and ever and ever. Okay, so how could there be a place called hell according to the scriptures? Well, I mean, it's like not according to the scriptures, but according to what's taught in the Christian church, where if you die and you've been a so-called wicked person all your life, then the Most High is going to condemn you and send you down to so-called hell to burn for all eternity. Okay? How is that not hate speech? Because, at the end of the day, what we Israelites preach is that when the kingdom of heaven is going to be established, life is going to flourish, all right, on earth. All right, as the kingdom of heaven is going to be established on earth as it is in heaven, well, so will life, life and righteousness and morals and order is going to be established on earth as well as the kingdom of heaven is going to be established, which is Yahweh Shai in the throne of David ruling. But meanwhile, these Christians, for them to teach the so-called hell doctrine, which is not scriptural at all, they're basically teaching that once the kingdom of heaven is established, death is going to flourish, all right, for all eternity, okay? And you mean to tell me that's not hate speech, all right? But yeah, as it said in 2 Ezra 15, all the unfaithful are going to die in their unfaithfulness. So at this point, who gives a damn what the Christian church is saying? The Christian church isn't taking a hardcore stance against the wickedness of this world. The Christian church isn't calling out the elites of this world and identifying them with the Edomites of the Bible and exposing who the man of sin is. Okay, the Christian church isn't even taking a hardcore stance against the MOTB or this NWO system. Okay, the Christian church isn't even going hardcore into Bible prophecy. Okay, so who in the hell gives a damn what Christians have to say as of 2025? These Christians folded when that jab came out. They folded back in 2020 with the lockdowns. All right, when those churches got shut down. Okay, so did the Christian church. Slowly but surely, more and more get shut down. Church attendance became less and less and less. All right, they were all on social media and all over the internet, scared as hell, not knowing what was going to come next. Okay, and secretly watching the Israelites, watching brothers going into news and prophecy and current events and linking everything that was going on in the world to prophecy, as brothers are still doing to this very day. All right. And now, as these Christians, as of lately, been more and more watching the Israelites, and stealing our breakdown, stealing our talking points and whatnot. Now you've seen slowly but surely, Christians now trying to tap the prophecy, okay, and so stepping the game up, so to speak, right, and acting as if the Lord is dealing with them. You got Christians going into the Hebrew, going into the Greek, trying to go into prophecy, trying to break down what the beast is and what the image of the beast is, what the mark of the beast is, all right, but they just don't have it, okay, and all these things are all being spoken and broken down on the earth through the men of the Lord, okay, the Israelites, all right, us, the hopeful elect, starting with the apostles and the bishops and the elders of Great Millstone, down to the least of us that are of the hopeful elect. See that? So, all right, so with that being said, all right, again, as you can see, the theme of today's camp, the writing is on the wall, all right, and that's, of course, making reference to Daniel, the 5th chapter. As when you go into this chapter, all right, Daniel chapter 5, and verse 1, it says, Belshazzar, the king, made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords and drank wine before the 1,000. Verse 2, Belshazzar, while he tasted the wine, commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple, which was in Jerusalem, all right, that the king and his princes, his wives and his concubines might drink therein. Verse 3, then they brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of the Lord, which was at Jerusalem, and the king and his princes, his wives and his concubines drank in them. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold, all right, all those idols and false gods of ancient Babylon. They used the gold and the silver that they took out of our temple, okay, to eat and drink and marry and be given into marriage with them and to worship their left-hand false gods and their idols, okay. And so it's like it says again, Daniel 5 verse 4, they drank wine and praised the gods of gold and of silver, of brass, of iron, of wood, and of stone, okay. Verse 5, in the same hour All right, as they were eating and drinking and being merry, all right, within that same hour, verse 5, in the same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Verse 6, then the king's countenance was changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his loins were loose, and his knees smote one against another. Okay, so as Belshazzar and his company, his government officials and his princes and his nobles and whatnot were having this great feast, right? Eating, drinking, being in mirth, being in merry, getting drunk. Okay, and of course, you already know more than likely they were probably doing a bunch of lewd acts as they were doing all the eating and drinking and getting drunk and worshiping the idols of Babylon, right? So while they were, partying and doing all these things, the Lord sent a handwriting on the wall. Okay, it was a form of a divine hand. Okay, writing a message upon the wall as they were eating and drinking. Okay, and so I'm gonna jump down to verse verse 22, Daniel 5 and 22. And thou his son, O Belshazzar, hast not humbled thine heart, though thou knewest all this. So this is basically Daniel cursing out Belshazzar. All right, as Daniel is getting ready to interpret what the handwriting meant. It says, verse 23, but hast lifted up thyself against the Lord of heaven, and they have brought the vessels of his house before thee, and thou and thy lords, thy wives, and thy concubines have drunk wine in them, and thou hast praised the gods of silver and gold and of brass, iron, wood, and stone, which see not, nor hear, nor know, and the power in whose hand thy breath is, and whose are all thy ways, hast thou not glorified. Okay, so now verse 24. Now it's getting ready to break down the handwriting on the wall and the meaning behind the message. All right. So verse 24, Daniel 5 verse 24. Then was the part of the hand sent from him, and this writing was written. Verse 25. And this is the writing that was written. Many tekel upharsin. All right. So that was what the divine hand wrote upon the wall. Many tekel upharsin. All right. And it says, verse 26, this is the interpretation of the thing. Many, Yahweh hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Okay. So the meaning behind the word many is that the Most High had numbered the kingdom of Babylon and finished it. Meaning what? Pretty much brought it to an end. All right. And let's go into the word many. Let's go into the word. All right. The word many in the blue letter. All right. The word many in the blue letter is Strong's H4484. Says mana, and it means a weight or measurement, usually 50 shekels, but maybe 60 shekels. Then in Strong's definition, it just says number. Okay, so the term many, it means number. The Most High numbered thy kingdom. Okay, the kingdom of Babylon during that time. All right. And then verse 27, it says, tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and art found wanting. All right, so now let's go into tekel. All right, tekel in verse 27 is Strong's H8625. It says takwal, and it means to weigh, be weighed. All right, tekel, shekel, a unit of weight. And the Strong's definition, it goes into to balance. All right, be weighed. Okay, so to be weighed in the balance, basically. All right, And as it said, thou art weighed in the balances and art found wanting. Okay, let's look up this word wanting. All right, this word wanting is Strong's H 2527. It says chasayar, chasayar. Okay, Strong's H 2627, chasayar, and it means lacking, wanting, deficient. Okay, deficient, wanting, lacking. You see, and not only was that the case for ancient Babylon during the time of Belshazzar, okay, but as the scripture says in Ecclesiastes, that which is then is now. All right, and history merely repeats itself. America is found Babylon the Great. Okay, the modern day Babylon. America is found lacking. Okay, wanting, deficient. Which what does deficient mean? Okay, the word deficient from Oxford Dictionary of English, it means not having enough of a specified quality or ingredient. Okay, so not having enough, you know, and that describes America in 2025. Okay, not having enough, not having enough what? Enough leadership, enough economic stability, okay, enough, unity within this place. Because what? Well, as a matter of fact, speaking of unity, all right, then it says, verse 28, Daniel 5 and 28, it says, Perez, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Okay, so, America, the modern day Babylon, just as it was in ancient Babylon, is found lacking, weighed in a balance, deficient. Okay, it doesn't have enough of economic stability, okay, government stability, stability at the leadership, and this place is all divided, okay, divided up politically. All right, any video or picture, whatever it may be that you come across on the internet, all right, you go down to the comment section, and all you see is people arguing within the comment section over different things, whether it be major things or just little small vain minute things. All right, and at some point when you scroll down the comment boards and look at look at people arguing back and forth over things that mean nothing, in some way, shape, or form, you're always going to have that one person that's going to try to make it political. Okay, trying to bring in this whole Democrat, Republican, all right, psyop in the midst of it. And that's all this whole political system is at the end of the day. It's just one big psyop. Okay, the two horns like a lamb that's eventually getting ready to speak as a dragon, pursuant to Revelation 13. Okay, this whole Democrat, Republican, Trump versus Biden, Trump versus Kamala Harris, Obama versus Trump, this and the third. It was all one big psyop over the minds of these people at the end of the day. Okay, to get these people trapped into the illusion that one is worse than the other. Okay, one is going to grant you more freedom than the other, but neither of them are set up to grant you people any freedom. They're just set up to give you the illusion of freedom. That's why you look at these presidents, whether it be current presidents or former presidents and these different politicians, they get on camera in these suits and ties. They make all these broken promises to the so-called American people, saying that they're going to do this and that, restore the economy, bring back jobs, okay, restore the family structure, and bring America back to its former glory again. But all that ends up happening is no promises are being kept, okay, and the middle class lose more and more each day. The so-called middle class and the poor class losing out more and more, okay, every year, every 4 years, every election, all right? So this place, just as it was in ancient Babylon, is found, okay, is numbered. The days of America are numbered, all right? Because these Edomites, especially these MAGA hats, these MAGA supporters, which even these MAGA supporters are being more and more divided in these other days. And they're being found wanting and lacking, right? These MAGA supporters, as America's days are numbered by Yahweh Shimon Shai, you know, these MAGA supporters, these Edomites, really and truly thought that this guy Trump was going to get back in office, okay, and restore America back to its former glory again, so that this place can continue ruling and dominating over the earth, and total wickedness, okay, for forever and ever and ever. Okay, well, according to prophecy, okay, that's clearly not the case. The Lord has numbered this place and found it lacking, wanting, and it's all divided up. Okay, America, just like ancient Babylon, is ready for the taking. Okay, it's just ready to be destroyed at this point, and that's why as of lately, all right, as a matter of fact, just as of lately, over this past week, we've seen leaders by the likes of Putin, all right, Xi Jinping of China, Kim Jong Un over there in North Korea, and as well the current president over there in India. They're basically joining hands. Okay, let me see if I can pull the article up. All right, let me read this article real quick. I'll show it to the screen. All right, so this is an article from the Newsbreak app. Okay, and of course you already see the title of it. Okay, China and Russia proclaim start of new world order under Xi Jinping and Putin. Okay, and the source of this article is from the Irish Star. All right, and so it says Chinese President Xi Jinping has urged global leaders to band together against, okay, quote unquote, hegemonism. Okay, hegemonism, delivering a sharp critique of Washington's quote unquote, bullying practices, while outlining his vision for a new world order at a major summit in China. You know, and so basically, Putin and the president of China, okay, and as well along with the president of India and North Korea, they're pretty much all banding together, okay, to curse out the West, especially curse out America, okay, curse out, all right, what this guy Xi Jinping called hegemonism, all right, that's what it said in this article, hegemonism, which what is hegemonism, all right, okay, so this is the term hegemonism from etymonline.com. It says in 1965, in reference to a policy of political domination on model of imperialism. You see that? So basically, when Xi Jinping cursed out America's hegemonism, as he called, he basically cursed out America's imperialism. Okay, which, and then it says see hegemony, which what is hegemony? Okay, hegemony, also from the etymonline.com, it means preponderance, dominance, leadership. Okay, originally of predominance of one city state or another in Greek history. It says from Greek hegemonia, which means leadership, a leading the way, a going first. You know, so basically, Russia and China are basically cursing out America's hegemony, their leadership and their dominance over the earth. Okay, and even going back real quick to this word hegemonism, all right, in the etymon line, it says again in reference to a policy of political domination on model of imperialism. Okay, so what is imperialism? All right, imperialism. It says advocacy. All right, this is from the etymonline.com. Imperialism, it means advocacy of empire, devotion to imperial interests. All right, originally in a Napoleonic context, but also used of Rome and of British foreign policy. See that? So it's tying ancient Rome as well as the British to this term imperialism. You know, and as we all know, us the hopeful elect, from the Renaissance period up until now, of course, out of the Renaissance, you had first what? The Spanish Empire back in 1492, ever since Columbus, so say, came to the West, so say discovered the Americas, right? So-called, right? That began the Spanish Empire of that time, and then later on during the during the late 1700s, you had the rise of the French Empire. You had the French Revolution and all these things, the French Republic, okay, and then later on in the 1800s, you had what? The British Empire. The British came into power during the whole Victorian era thing, okay, where they were going all across the earth, using their strong navy at the time to go all throughout the earth, all right, come to the west, go all throughout West Africa, persecuting Jake, even going as far as India, persecuting Elam, okay. And one thing that the British and the French and the Spanish all had in common, even though they fought different wars against each other, but one thing they all had in common when you go into their histories is that they were all considered the revival of the ancient Western Roman Empire during their times of rulership. When you go into the Spanish Empire, that was considered a form of the ancient Western Roman Empire being revived in the earth during that time. The 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, leading up to the early 1700s, okay, and even the so-called French Empire. At that time, that was considered another revival of ancient Rome, okay, and even the British Empire, that was also considered, all right, during the 1800s, early 1900s ish, when the British were the dominant power on the earth during that time. They were considered the revival of ancient Rome during that time. It was the 1800s going into the early to mid 1900s. You see that? And so this term imperialism is linking into ancient Rome as well as British foreign policy. You see that? Advocating an empire. Okay? And here, as we see America, which ultimately came out of the British during the Revolutionary War, has done nothing but imperialism, especially ever since after World War II. Okay? After World War II ended, America became the new dominating power over the earth. Especially all thanks to dropping the atomic bomb over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The whole America put the whole world in fear at that time. Even to this very time. And so, ever since World War II, when America was declared, all right, the dominating country or the dominating power in the earth, it was basically an empire. Okay, and in practice, what it called was known as imperialism, using their American dominance to, take Hawaii, okay, take over different regions of the earth, okay, implement, American policies and democracy and impose the American dollar into different regions of the earth. All right, imperialism. You see that? And that's all a part of America's hegemony. All right, that now Putin and Xi Jinping of China are now cursing out. Okay, they're coming together to basically come up against the West. Which Putin and the Russians, they're Edomites as well, just as Esau Edom rules over America, along with his European allies, NATO and the EU. But the Lord has raised up Russia in these outer days, okay, to come up against their own Western brothers, their own Western Edomite brothers. Linking up with America's enemies, these heathen nations, Moab, Ammon, Iran, okay, India, Elam, Libya, Ethiopia, Russia is linking up with all these heathen nations that are enemies against America to basically form their own beast system, so to speak, okay, the BRICS nations, to ultimately come up against America and aid in the destruction of this place, okay, and you see, going back to this article again, you see this article, all right, it says Chinese President Xi Jinping has urged global leaders to band together against hegemonism, okay, Western dominance, and it says delivering a sharp critique of Washington's quote-unquote bullying practices, okay, going all throughout the earth, rape, robbery, murder, waging war, okay, overthrowing governments, and even as it speaks up in Habakkuk, the first chapter, deriding strongholds, you see that? Toppling governments and implementing puppet leaders over different countries that they want to control and have dominion over, Iraq, all right? And they're trying to even do that right now over there in Venezuela, all right? You've been hearing as of lately this past week, Trump is basically waging war against Venezuela and their army, okay, all under the guise of, fighting crime and calling, Venezuela a bunch of criminals and drug dealers and things like that, which, they're all criminals and drug dealers running around Venezuela in its different countries where the tribes are, okay, even amongst the leadership. All right. But however, first and foremost, all right, Esau was never about, fighting drug dealers and dealing with the drug crisis and drug problems and things like that, because it's well known that, all right, all the drug problem that's here in America right now, okay, is all because of this American government. You know, who you think was putting all types of crack and cocaine all up in Jake's neighborhoods back in the 80s and the 90s that had Jake all strung out, killing each other, forming these gangs and whatnot? Who do you think is at the forefront of being responsible for that? The government, all right, the U.S. government, putting drugs and guns all in Jake's neighborhoods, because ain't no niggas flying planes down into South America and different regions of the earth, okay, getting all types of drugs and bringing it back to the United States. No, okay, that's Esau doing that, okay, putting all these things within our neighborhoods and just sitting back and watching us destroy each other, okay, and then leaving the rest, okay, grabbing up the rest and throwing them in jail, giving them life sentences. That's how this devil operates, okay. And so what's going on down there in Venezuela, all right, that's not a war that Esau and Trump is waging to fight against drugs and drug dealers and all these things. No, that's ultimately a war that they're waging down there in Venezuela to overthrow, all right, the leader of Venezuela, which I forget his name, okay, and have control over Venezuela's oil reserves. You see that, to further push, okay, America's imperialist bullying tactics, okay, bullying Venezuela to gain control over their oil resources, okay. That's what that whole war in Venezuela is all about, okay. All right, and so yeah, like, you know, but all these things, as we see all these heathen nations coming up against Babylon America, all right, and as we even see the average American suffering in this place, especially the average Edomite American, all right, Trump supporting Edomite here in America, all these things let us, the hopeful elect, know that, hey, the writing is on the wall on this place. All right, the Lord has numbered this place. Okay, is lacking, is deficient. All right, is all divided up, and the Lord's going to destroy Babylon the Great America. Okay, well, as a matter of fact, let's do this. All right, give me a second. All right, so let's do this. All right, all right. So this is what I just did. I went on Chat GPT and I asked the question: explain Daniel 5 verses 24 to 28 in the Bible. Okay, so this is the response from ChatGPT. It says Daniel 5 verses 24 to 28 is a key part of the dramatic story where the Babylonian king Belshazzar saw a mysterious handwrite words on the walls during a royal feast. The prophet Daniel was called to interpret the message, which comes as a judgment from the Most High God Yahweh. Okay, and so now it's going to go into it. It says, all right. So now it's going to go into it. It says, many, meaning number, interpretation. The Most High has numbered the days of Belshazzar's reign and brought it to an end. The repetition emphasizes certainty and urgency. Okay, so many means number. And then it says, tekel, meaning weighed. And it says, Belshazzar has been weighed on the Most High scales All right, and we know a scale, like a balance beam, is symbolic of judgment. Okay, even within Esau's core system today, one of the main symbols of Esau's core system is like a balance scale. Okay, where you have one side hanging lower than the other side. A balance scale is symbolic of judgment. Okay, so it says uh, tekel, meaning weighed. Belshazzar has been weighed on the Most High's scales and has come up short. He lacks righteousness and humility. All right, and not only did that speak for Belshazzar himself, but the whole entire ancient Neo-Babylonian empire as a whole. Lacking righteousness, lacking humility towards Yahweh Shai, lacking the fear of the Lord, okay, impiety. And as a matter of fact, uh, let's go into this real quick. All right, quick precept. Second Ezra's. Yep, this is Second Ezra's, chapter 4 and verse 27. All right, it says, and cannot comprehend the things that are promised to the righteous in time to come, for this world is full of unrighteousness and infirmities. And mind you, at the time when Ezra was prophesying on the scene, all right, it was towards the later, the tail end of the ancient Babylonian Empire, okay, during the time of Belshazzar, as well as into the beginning of the Persian and Mede Empire, as Ezra, the prophet Ezra, who was around when the temple was being rebuilt under the days of King Cyrus of the Persians. So Daniel lived during the tail end of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, as well as the beginning of the Persian and Mede Empire. And so, as he witnessed during this time, all right, at the tail end of the ancient Neo-Babylonian Empire, he said that this world is full of unrighteousness and infirmities. Okay, and not only does that perfectly describe, the ancient Neo-Babylonian Empire, but that also describes, okay, the tail end of the American Empire as of 2025. America is full of all unrighteousness, all right, full of all abominations, idol worship, okay, alphabet lifestyle, odious works, you see, odious works, okay, feminism, women all out of order, all right, getting comfortable talking shit against men all over the internet, all right, on the job and whatnot, okay, people are catching hell, the poor is catching more and more hell while the rich get rich, okay, the leaders of this place are all unstable and divided. There's no righteousness and morals being pushed and promoted in this place. Why do you think marriage is so at an all-time low and birthrights are so low in this place? Okay, because you can't flourish and establish a family and establish a legacy in a place like this. And who in their right minds would want to start a family and establish a legacy, okay, within the kingdom that's getting ready to be destroyed, down to the foundation thereof. Okay? And so just as we see, Babylon the Great, America is at an all-time low. The same thing was going on during the time of Belshazzar in ancient Babylon. Okay? And so going back to ChatGPT, now it goes into Perez, okay, or Upharsin, right? It says it means divided, okay? Belshazzar's kingdom will be divided and given to the Medes and Persians. This is both a literal political change and a symbolic judgment. See that? So as we see, one of the things that led to the ancient Neo-Babylonian kingdom being destroyed, okay, of course we know it was ultimately the will of the Lord for prophecy to come to pass, for Daniel the 7th chapter to come to pass, all right? But as well, as we see, one of the other things that led to the destruction and downfall of the ancient Babylonian kingdom was also division, okay? Especially division from the political realm, all right? Division within the leadership, the kings and their nobles and the politicians and the priesthood being all divided up. And clearly we see that here today in America, okay? And as Yahweh Shai, all right, spoke of, Matthew 12, verse 25, and Yahweh Shai knew their thoughts and said unto them, Every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. All right. Verse 26. If Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall then his kingdom stand? See that? So Yahushua even breaking it down, saying what? That any kingdom that's divided is not going to stand. It's ultimately going to be destroyed. And as well, as we always read this verse in the NLT, okay, Matthew 12, verse 25 in the NLT, Yahushua knew their thoughts and replied, any kingdom divided by civil war is doomed. A town or family splintered by feuding will fall apart. And you see, and that's another thing, that all this division here in America, Babylon the Great, is all leading up to civil war, civil unrest. Okay, because again, as we see the writing on the wall in this place is being more and more manifest in these latter days. Okay, you know, these average everyday Americans are catching more and more hell, especially the middle class. Okay, and then you even have now, as of lately, a lot of these Edomites who voted for Trump, they're now having regrets because what? A lot of them are losing their jobs. Okay, a lot of them are still broke as hell. Okay, you know, as they see, you know, the price of housing and rent hasn't gone down since Trump took office. The price of food hasn't gone down. The price of gas hasn't gone down. The overall cost of living as a whole hasn't gone down under Trump. Okay, and he was all on TV making all these promises, saying that he was going to fix the economy, you know, bring down inflation, all these good things, right? You know, bring down the cost of living, okay, make America great again, and all this other BS. And that's just what it was, a bunch of BS, okay, a bunch of great swelling words to deceive these MAGAs out here, okay, and which, by the way, the word MAGA in the Latin, it means witch, okay. So literally this guy Trump and, you know, Elon Musk in this administration, okay, pulled all types of witchcraft over these regular everyday Americans, especially even these Edomites, okay. And that's why, let me get this. Let's see. Let's get this. This is Baruch chapter 4. Baruch chapter 4 and verse 30. All right. All right. Baruch chapter 4 and verse 30. It says, take a good heart, O Jerusalem, for he that gave thee that name will comfort thee. Okay. And Jerusalem is talking about us, the hopeful elect, the remnant. Okay. And the Lord Yahweh Shah has most certainly comforted us, the remnant, in these outer days. With what? The Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, okay? The comfort and understanding prophecy, the comfort and understanding that what? That Esau's rulership and these heathen nations' rulership is numbered, all right? It's found wanting, okay? It's all divided up, and the Lord's getting ready to bring judgment, okay? Because, hey, as we, the hopeful elect, see Babylon, America waxing worse and worse on all levels, okay, and these people here in America are being more and more discomforted. They're catching more hell, okay, they're becoming more and more angry, more and more cycle. Hey, all these things comfort us, the hopeful elect, all right? These things aren't a burden to us. You know, we see different things on the news of things, you know, looking like it's not going to get better. Hey, that's comfort to us. That brings joy to us. You see that? Because to us, the hopeful elect, these things let us know that what? That the Lord is casting out America more and more. He's getting ready to bring judgment upon this place, and he's getting ready to deliver us, the hopeful elect, okay, and establish the kingdom of heaven, and root out all this unrighteousness and wickedness and evil and Satanism that's being pushed in the earth, okay, with America being at the forefront of all this wickedness that's being pushed in the earth. You see that? So Baruch chapter 4 and verse 30 again, It says, "Take a good heart, O Jerusalem, for he that gave thee that name will comfort thee." Okay. Verse 31, it says, "Miserable are they that afflicted thee, and rejoice at thy fall. Miserable are the cities which thy children served. Miserable is she that received thy sons." And that's what America is going through right now, especially these Edomites. They're miserable as hell now. Okay, they thought when this guy Trump was going to be in office, he was going to restore their joy again. All right, make them merry again. Okay, make make so-called white America great again and make America great again as a whole. Restore America back to its glory days and all this other nonsense. Okay, but it all went opposite on these devils. Okay, everything isn't going as planned according to these average American Edomites. Okay, they're miserable. You even got a lot of these Edomites catching more hell than Jake in these other days. Okay, hey, why you think when you look at certain major cities across the United States, all right, when you look at the homeless population, right, within these different major cities across the United States, when you look at the homeless population, a lot of these homeless people and these drug addicted people that you see all on the streets, destitute, are mostly Edomites. Okay, Edomites that are homeless, okay, addicted to all these drugs, all right, out on the streets, destitute, all bent over like this, looking like zombies. It mostly be Edomites you see in that estate, okay? And so it all speaks to how, as as America is declining more and more as out of days, okay, the joy of the Edomite in America is declining more and more as out of days as well. And so, as we've been seeing all throughout this year, one of the things, okay, one of the deceptions that Trump has been pulling over these Edomite Americans to, make them feel better and whatnot, is constantly push out these narratives that Jake is the problem, okay, with the whole, ICE and deportation thing that's been going on all this year, all right, because what's been one of the main narratives that's been used to justify Trump, coming down with ICE and deporting all these northern tribes migrants. He's been claiming that they're a bunch of cartels, that they're here illegally, they're a bunch of criminals, and this, that, and the third. Okay, which we're not denying that a lot of northern tribes are here illegally, and that some of them are committing crimes and this, that, and the third. But you know, if you've been noticing as well, a lot of these northern tribes that they've been deporting out of the country were actual legal American citizens that's been living here for years, working, raising families in this place, paying their bills, paying their taxes like everybody else. No criminal background, no criminal history. All right, law-abiding citizens, and they're just grabbing them up, okay, off of their jobs, or while after they come out of the store with their groceries and whatnot, coming out of the bathroom, they're sending ICE in these different locations to basically grab them up, arrest them, bring them to these detention centers, alligator Alcatraz included, and just shipping them out of the country, just like that, okay, while being legal born American citizens, okay. And as we've been seeing so far this year, a lot of these deportations have pretty much backfired on America. Okay, a lot of a lot of these jobs, a lot of these different jobs are now pretty much thinned out as far as employees, because what? A lot of the employees that's been working at these particular jobs were these same northern tribes that's been getting deported out of here. Okay, along with these farms, the farming industry has taken a major hit due to these mass deportations. As a matter of fact, as a matter of fact, I even have a video, all right, that I saw on TikTok earlier. Let's see if I can pull it up. Let's see. Give me a second. Give me a second. Let's see. Bear with me for a second. All right, just bear with me for a second. Just like you, with a delay. All right. I saw this on on TikTok earlier. All right, dealing with the situation with these farmers. All right, as the farming industry has been taking a major hit this year, with the whole ICE deportation and things like that. Okay, so this is a video that I saw on TikTok earlier today. All right, and I'll just let you watch and listen to it for yourself. All right, Lord willing, y'all can see this. Okay.
And I've never been as worried as I am now about whether or not my kids and grandkids will be able to carry on. I just would like to see somebody help us get our markets back. We need our exports, and we just need to be paid for what we do. And that's not happening. And we're in real trouble.
Okay. So as you see, now now these farmers are through. Okay. All right. Ever since ICE, through the executive orders of Trump, has been going hard with these these deportations of these northern tribes. All right, because when you go into it, who were the main people that was working at most of these farms here in America? It was northern tribes. Issachar, all right, Asher, okay, Zebulon. The northern tribes from throughout the west. They were the main ones working on these farms, picking your crops, all right, producing your produce that you buy out of the store, your fruits, your vegetables, your herbs, okay, your spices. It was mostly northern tribes laboring in the fields doing these things. So now, now as of lately this past year, as these northern tribes have been, getting deported left and right and taking off these fields, and now these farmers, and as you even saw in that video, that TikTok video, these Edomite farmers are the main ones taking the main hit from these deportations. Okay, and as it speaks of in let's see, all right, as it speaks of in Jeremiah. It speaks of in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 50, and verse 16. It says, "Cut off the sower from Babylon, and him that handleth the sickle in the time of harvest." And the sower and him that's handled the sickle refers to what? These farmers. Okay, so now these farmers are being cut off left and right. Okay, begging Trump for aid, asking for help. All right, catching hell. You know, they're you know, their pay is decreasing because of the economic impacts that's came from these deportations. Okay, they're being cut off. All right, it says Jeremiah 50 verse 16 again, cut off the sower from Babylon, and him that handleth the sickle in the time of harvest, for fear of the oppressing sword. They shall turn every one to his people, and they shall flee every one to his own land. And as well, that's another thing as to why a lot of these northern tribes are no longer working on these farms, because not only are they themselves being deported, but a lot of them are also self-deporting themselves out of their country. Okay, out of fear of what? ICE. These ICE agents. Okay, the oppressing sword, as it's just read, and so what? They're turning to their own people, and a lot of them are even resorting to going back to their native lands. Okay, because they don't want to get grabbed up by these ICE agents and taken to who knows what. All right, whoever taken to Alligator Alcatraz and whatnot to be tortured, to be dehumanized, And there's even been information coming out about a couple months ago, about a month or two ago, where these ICE agents are even arresting a lot of these northern tribes, all right, and boarding them on military planes, flying them over the oceans, and just dropping them into the middle of the ocean while handcuffed and shackled and all of that. So a lot of these northern tribes have been, not only being deported, all right, forcefully against their will, but also being also self-deporting themselves out of fear of, the stories that they've been hearing from these ICE agents, okay, in these deportations, you know. But all in all, it's all in telling what? That the sower in Babylon, these different farmers and agriculturalists are being cut off. Their businesses and their farms are being left destitute, okay. Nobody wants to work for them. And these Edomite MAGA supporters that's, been all for these deportations and Trump and all these things, none of their asses are going to work on these farms to replace these farmers and make America back great again. Okay. So this is all biting these Edomites back in the ass. All this hell that they're putting on Jake. Okay. All this hell that they're putting on Jake, both the northern and the southern kingdom, with the deportations, the DEIs. All right. That's all backfiring upon these Edomites. And as well, speaking of DEIs, when you go into it, when you go into the real history of who's been benefiting from DEIs and all these things, it's been Edomite women as well as men. All right, Edomite women and men have been the main people over these years that's been benefiting from DEIs. But Trump was able to go on TV and push this narrative that has been Jake that's benefiting from DEIs, which Jake has, with affirmative action and civil rights and all these things. Jake has benefited from DEIs and affirmative action and all these things, especially primarily the so-called black woman. All right, but nowadays, as Trump has been doing these DEI cuts and slashing jobs left and right, the main people that's been catching hell from all these job losses and layoffs and all these things have been Edomites, women and men. Okay. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show you another article that I saw as well earlier today. Because speaking of the farming industry taking a major hit with the northern tribes being deported and taken off of these farms and leaving these farms destitute, okay, and these Edomite MAGA supporters not volunteering to go work on these farms to replace them, right? Now, this right here, what I'm about to show you on the screen, is going to be the new method of, replacing these, these migrant farmers, these northern tribes that's been, deported off of these farms. This is what Esau is setting up to replace these migrant farmers. Okay, this is another article from the Newsbreak app. All right, and as you see the title of the article, all right, Lord willing, y'all can see this. It says, scientists, all right, scientists develop incredible robots that could revolutionize farming, sensing technology. Okay, and the source of this article is from, as you see, the Cool Down. All right. So now that Esau sees, an issue popping up from these migrants being deported off of these farms, and these farms being left destitute, okay, which we know that's ultimately all being done by design, okay, because even over these past few years, we've been seeing what this guy Gil Bates, quietly, buying up all the farmland here in America, okay, destroying crops, creating more GMOs, okay, destroying the animals, domestic animals, destroying cows, destroying chickens, lambs, sheep, okay, all for the purpose of what? To create lab-grown meat, synthetic, man-made meat, all right? And so now, as Esau has created, all right, an issue with this whole farming issue, with the migrants being taken off of these farms, now look at what Esau is resorting to fix that so-called problem. These scientists, all right, developing robots to now basically be the new farmers, all right, creating robots to farm these farmlands, all right, and it goes into it as it goes into it, it says, thanks to new technology, agricultural robots may be getting a serious skill improvement in tending to crops. It says, Sonic Boom, a sensing technology developed by Robotics Institute at Carnegie Mellon University, can help farming robots overcome the limitations of needing a camera to guide them. And it says, according to researchers, humans can reach through leaves and vines to identify fruits by touch. Robots generally cannot do this, but with sensing technology, they could get around the need to see the fruit using the vibrational frequency of objects to sense what they are looking for, you know, and it continues to go more into it. But, basically, this is what Esau is resorting to deal with the whole farming industry. He's now creating robot farmers. Okay, robots are now going to be working, all right, in the fields, on the farmlands, picking your crops, picking your produce, all right. The produce that you buy in the store, your fruits, your vegetables, your herbs, your spices. Now all these things are going to be handled by robots and AI. You see that? And so, all these things, it's all until that, Babylon is through. Okay? Babylon the Great in America is through. All right? We're at the end of an empire, an end of an age. Okay? The end of Esau's age, his rulership, his blessing. We're at the end of America's rulership and dominance over the earth, hegemony, as we went into. All right? And we all know what's coming next. All right? Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. 2 Ezra 6 and 9. The kingdom of heaven is getting ready to be established. All right? In our lifetime. See that? So, this is back in Baruch. This is back in Baruch chapter 4 and verse 31 again. It says, miserable are they that afflicted thee, and rejoice at thy fall. Miserable are the cities which thy children served. Miserable is she that received thy sons. You see, and all we see all across America, Babylon the Great, especially from these Edomites, men and women, is nothing but misery on their faces. All right? You go into your grocery stores, or you go into the gym or whatnot, or these different public places, for the most part, when you look at these Edomites walking around, okay, they look unhappy. All right? Some of them are, still walking around smiling and acting like everything is all good, okay, and whatnot. But for the most part, a lot of these Edomites are walking around looking pissed the hell off, okay? They go into the store, they look at the price of the different objects in the store, and they're unhappy, okay? They're pissed off, they're miserable, because they clearly see, all right, or they're starting to see more and more now than ever that this guy Trump was put in office to dupe them, deceive them, okay, to give them the false illusion, the false hope that that America was going to continue, all right, to continue in power and be made great again, all right. But then now they're starting to realize that was all one big farce, okay, and that this guy Trump, sooner or later they're going to really and truly realize that Trump was ultimately put in office to usher America into the NWO, all right, slowly but surely take away people's constitutional rights, all right, and usher this country into the NWO system. You see that via the Quran. And it says, all right, because as a matter of fact, speaking of misery and the whole ordeal with the farming industry, right? Let's go to 2nd Ezra 6. 2nd Ezra 6 and verse 22. It says, and suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown. Okay, what are the sown places? These farmlands. Okay, they're now starting to appear unsown. As a matter of fact, I saw another video on TikTok earlier today as well. Let me see if I can find it. All right, speaking of the sown places appearing unsown, right? Hopefully I can still find that video. Let me see. Yep. All right. I'm gonna let y'all see this. All right. Speaking of the sown places appearing unsown, right? Now, this is another video that I saw on TikTok earlier today as well. All right. Let me just let y'all see it for yourselves. A whole entire strawberry field out there in Tampa, Florida, just left to rot. Okay. It's unsown. You see that? Because what? There's nobody there to work the field, to pick the strawberries, okay, to pick the fruits, okay, all due to the mass deportation of the northern tribes that were once working in these fields, okay, and being that this pretty much took place down there in Tampa, Florida, okay, you best believe it was most likely Ephraim down there working those fields, Manasseh, okay, maybe even a little bit of Reuben here and there, the so-called Seminole Indians, okay, which resided primarily down there in Florida, all right, and as well a little bit of Issachar mixed in there as well, working this particular strawberry field, where now it's appearing unsown, all right, which speaks to, okay, the scripture we just read. All right. In fact, let me check the sound, make sure I'm still good. Testing, 1 2 1 2. Testing, 1 2. All right, God, still good. All right, and so going back to 2nd Ezra 6 and 22 again, it says, "And suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown," like that video that I just showed y'all, right? And it says, the full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty. So, the sown places, these different farmlands, not being tended to, not being looked after, okay, the crops and the vegetables not being picked and produced, is all going to lead to what? The storehouses being empty, meaning what? Your supermarkets, your Walmarts, your Super Ones, your Targets, okay, your Whole Foods, your Costco's, all right, your Publix, all right, these farmlands not being worked and tended to, okay, is all going to lead to ultimately famine, okay, food shortages, all right. You're going to go into the store one day, let that pass. You're going to go into your local supermarkets one day, or your local mini markets, okay, one day, and find a scarce amount of produce, a scarce amount of fruits, vegetables, herbs, spices, okay, nutritional things that you need, okay. You're gonna go into the store one day and not hardly find any of these things, okay. And it's all starting with what? This whole migrant deportation situation, okay. Migrants being deported off of these farmlands, the soil being cut off in Babylon, as we read in Jeremiah 15 and 16, all right. What's happening with the farming industry is not only going to have economic impacts here in America, but it's also going to have impacts in regards to famine, food shortages, all right. So it says again, 2nd Ezra 6 verse 22, "And suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown, the full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty," okay. Verse 23, "And the trumpet shall give a sound, which when every man heareth, they shall be suddenly afraid," all right. Verse 24, "At that time shall friends fight one against another like enemies, and the earth shall stand in fear with those that dwell therein." You see that? So the sown places appearing unsown, all right, all these fruits and vegetables that's in the farmlands basically being left to rot, okay, which is all going to lead to a scarcity of food and produce in the grocery stores, which is all going to lead to famine, all right. All these things are going to lead to, as it said in verse 24, friends shall, all right, at the time shall friends fight one against another like enemies. It's all going to lead to civil war, civil unrest, okay, all out anarchy, all out chaos, okay. Because as there's a saying in this world, uh, when people lose everything, they lose it. Okay, especially here in America, Babylon the Great, as people are so used to comforts and luxuries and eating, drinking, marrying, and being given into marriage in this place. Well, guess what? When these people here in America, when all their little comforts and luxuries and dainties get taken away from them, okay, when they see it all vanish and disappear right before their eyes, people are gonna lose their shit. Okay, just like when you have a child, right, that's spoiled rotten, a child that's always used to that's always used to having things done their way, okay, and getting everything that they want while doing little to nothing to earn it. All right, when you have a child that's been raised up spoiled rotten, getting everything that they want while not having to, working for it or really and truly earning it. Okay, when there come a time where something happens in that child's life where it doesn't go their way, or they don't get what they want, right? They don't get their so-called Christmas presents or their so-called birthday gifts, which we know according to the scriptures we're not supposed to celebrate Christmas or birthdays and none of these things. All right, but when a child doesn't get their presents or their gifts or the things that they want, what do? They throw a temper tantrum, right? They get violent, they get impulsive, they get carnal, okay? They lose control, they lose their shits, you know? And that's what's getting ready to happen to these average, everyday American people on a higher level, okay? When all these people's comforts and luxuries, their bread and circus, their food, their produce, okay? And all these things that these people boast in America get taken away from them, okay, they're gonna lose their shit. They're gonna resort to violence. They're gonna resort to taking it to the streets. They're gonna resort to civil war, civil unrest, and it's even gonna resort to, as it speaks of in 2nd Ezra 15, all right, as we always bring out. 2nd Ezra 15, let's start at verse 14. It says, "For the woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, okay, and one people shall stand up to fight against another, and swords in their hands." And of course, what's the modern day sword? The gun, okay, pistols, or semi-automatic weapons, rifles, shotguns, okay. That's the modern day sword. That's the modern day standard instrument of war in this current time, okay. So what this verse is saying is, civil war is coming down the pipe, civil unrest, okay, all out anarchy, all out chaos, all right. And it continues to read verse 16, "For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another." Okay, friends shall fight against another like enemies, like we read in 2nd Ezra 6, right? It says, "They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power." And that's what civil war and civil unrest in this country is also going to lead up to, as these people, as they're getting ready to lose their comforts and luxuries and their food and their wine and the things that make them merry. Not only are people going to resort to taking up arms and coming up against each other in civil war, but it's also going to resort to people coming up against their government. Okay, especially these MAGA supporters. All right, these MAGA hats, these MAGA supporters. That was all about Trump and having their faith in Trump. Okay, when these Edomites fully and truly wrap their minds and realize that Trump wasn't put in office for their best interest, okay, to make America great again and make the middle class great again. He was ultimately put in office to, do the bidding of the elite and to make the rich greater, all right, and to usher America into the NWO system and take away these people's constitutional rights. That's when these Edomites are going to fully lose it and take it to the streets. That's when the sedition is going to pop off. And we already see that type of environment brewing up all over the internet, with people, arguing all over the internet, arguing over politics. A lot of these MAGA supporters waking up more and more, having voters remorse. Okay, a lot of these same Edomites are going to be the ones that's going to fulfill these prophecies that we're reading of right here. All right, not regarding their kings nor their princes. All right, and taking it to the streets. And it says, verse 17, 2nd Ezra 15, verse 17, "A man shall desire to go into a city and should not be able, okay, because when all our hell breaks loose in this country, it's going to lead to what? All right, lockdowns, cities being lockdowns, all right, checkpoints, okay, and as well, that's also going to justify Esau coming with martial law to restore order out of chaos, right? And this as well is going to justify Esau implementing, mass AI and mass surveillance to, all right, to as well as Palantir to bring forth the left hand order that he needs, all right, out of the left hand chaos that he's going to orchestrate. All this civil war and civil unrest, you best believe, okay, not only are these things going to happen according to prophecy as we're reading up right here, but all these things are also as well going to happen according to the agenda of the elites of Esau Edom, as they need to orchestrate chaos to come down with their left hand order, okay, to do away with the chaos that they're going to orchestrate, okay, to empty, okay, mass surveillance, AI, martial law, okay, and ultimately, the NWO and the Charagma. These are the things that's going to come out of, okay, all this civil war and civil unrest and all this hell that's coming to this country, okay, anarchy, sedition, all these things. Esau come forward to come down with the NWO via the Charagma, all right. And so, as it continues to say, second, and that's just 15 verse 17, and shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able, 18, for because it is destroyed, and men shall be afraid. Verse 19, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods. Because of what? Because of lack, all right, famine, and for great tribulation, because of all this hell that's going to be happening. Okay, all this hell that's going to be happening due to, famine, lack of food. Okay, the sown place appearing unsown, tribulation everywhere. Okay, the love of many waxing cold, perplexity. Okay, all these things are coming down the pipe. You see that? All these things are showing forth to us, the hopeful elect, that what? The writing is on the wall all over again. This place has been found numbered, has been found wanting, lacking, slacking, deficient, and it's all divided up. Okay, Babylon the Great America is ready for the taking. It's ready for the destruction. You see that? It's ready for judgment from Yahweh Shema Shai. You know, and each day that we, the hopeful elect, wake up, okay, through the grace and mercy of Yahweh Shema Shai, brings us one day closer to this place being destroyed and our deliverance, our salvation. Lord will not be of that number. You see that? So going back to chapter 4 and verse 32 says, miserable are the cities which thy children served, miserable is she that received thy sons. Verse 33, for as she rejoiced at thy ruin and was glad at thy fall, so shall she be grieved for her own desolation. See that? So just as these Edomites rejoice at our fall, okay, rejoice over seeing our people in a low, destitute state here in America, okay, on drugs, on crack, living in the ghetto, living on a reservations, living in a barrios, right? Being last hired, first fired, okay, seeing our people destroy each other in the neighborhoods, okay, just seeing our people completely bugging out in America more and more. Just as Esau, Edom, in his place have, building themselves up in pride, seeing our people fall. Well, guess what? Now the shoe is getting ready to be put on the other foot. See that? Now the Lord is casting down a pride in the rejoicing of Esau, Edom. As a matter of fact, as it even speaks of, it's like, all right, look this up real quick. It's like it. All right. Because as it speaks of in the book of Lamentations, right? Lamentations chapter 4, Lamentations chapter 4 and verse 21, it says, rejoice and be glad. Edomites is out there, as Trump is putting more hell upon the northern tribes with all these ICE deportations, and then now mobilizing National Guard troops throughout these different major cities where he lives at. Hey, as you Edomites are feeling more proud about yourself as Trump is putting more hell upon Jake. Okay, the Lord said, hey, rejoice and be glad, you damn Edomites. Because ultimately, as well, again, with all these ICE deportations and DEI, job cuts, and all these things, when you go into it, these things are ultimately affecting these Edomites as well. Okay, not only are they affecting Jake, of course, but they're as well affecting these Edomites. Okay, so but hey, as the Lord said, Lamentations 4, verse 21 again, rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom, that dwellest in the land of Uz, the cup also shall pass through unto thee. Thou shalt be drunken and shalt make thyself naked. So the cup is now getting ready to be passed to Edomites. Okay, these curses, all right, because as brothers, from the Apostles' Great Millstone down to even myself as well, this past week, been going into how as these MAGA supporting Edomites are catching more and more hell, they're getting on social media and getting on TikTok complaining about everything that Trump has done so far and how they've been losing jobs left and right and how these deportations haven't made their lives any better. Okay, we're starting to slowly but surely see the Lord put these curses upon these Edomites as he's put upon us. You see that? Now the shoe is getting ready to be put up on the other foot. Okay, you Edomites, these curses are now being put upon you. And as it continues to say, verse 22, Lamentation 4 and 22, the punishment of thine iniquity is accomplished, O daughter of Zion. And hey, we're at the time for our punishment, all right? Us Israelites being under these curses are now just about accomplished. And you see the Lord raising up the elect in these outer days are a major sign of our punishment and these curses being ready to be lifted off of us. You see that? It says, Lamentation 4 and 22, the punishment of thine iniquity is accomplished, O daughter of Zion. He will no more carry thee away into captivity. He will visit thine iniquity, O daughter of Edom. He will discover thy sins. So now the Lord is slowly but surely visiting upon these Edomites, now making their lives miserable, now putting the curses slowly but surely upon them. Okay, making them lose jobs. All right, casting down the economy of Babylon the Great. The job market is being cast down. The education in this country is all being cast down. Esau is being exposed more and more left to right. Okay, with the whole Epstein situation, and mind you, the whole Epstein situation with Esau is just, a fraction of that these elites do behind closed doors. Okay, that's just a small fraction of what these elites really and truly have going on behind closed doors. Okay, the odious works, right? But all in all, Esau is looking bad nowadays. Okay, he's looking more pissed off. He's looking more and more unhappy. He's becoming more and more miserable, right? Because what? He sees his precious kingdom, his precious America, falling and crumbling more and more right before his eyes in these outer days. Okay, and even a lot of these Edomites, okay, little here and there can see the writing on the wall themselves, and that's why, as I was speaking of on one of my last camps, you see a lot of people. Well, not a lot, rather, but you see small numbers of people here in America, mostly the rich and the wealthier Americans, slowly but surely fleeing this country, moving out of here. Okay, taking their riches, their wealth, their education, and their careers, and go and live elsewhere. Okay, because even they can see the writing on the wall of this place, that this place is through. All right. Now, what they don't know is that is ultimately Yahweh Shema Shah that's bringing this place down and getting ready to judge this place. But nonetheless, a lot of these rich Edomites in this country are now leaving this place because they can basically see that this place is through. You see, all right. So let's go back to Lamentations 4. Salakia, not Lamentations. Baruch chapter 3 and verse 34 again. It says, "For I will take away the rejoicing of a great multitude, and her pride shall be turned into mourning." All right. Verse 35. "For fire shall come upon her from the everlasting, long to endure, and she shall be inhabited of devils for a great time." And that all speaks to the destruction of Babylon the Great America. Okay, because fire, the Lord didn't send down fire upon the ancient Neo-Babylonian empire. Okay, no, that the Lord didn't judge the ancient Babylonian empire by sending down fire from heaven. Okay, he eventually sent the Persians and Medes to take over the kingdom. Okay, but as it's speaking of the Lord sending down fire from heaven upon Babylon in Baruch, the 4th chapter, okay, that's speaking of Babylon the Great, America, what the Lord is getting ready to do to this kingdom. Okay, see that? And so, as a matter of fact, let me get this. Let's see. Let's see. Yep, second Ezra, not second Ezra. This is Ecclesiastes or Sirach, chapter 16, verse 6. It says, in the congregation of the ungodly shall a fire be kindled, and in a rebellious nation wrath is set on fire. And America is that rebellious nation. Even our forefather Jeremiah called this place in Jeremiah 50, and I want to say verse 21 to be exact. He called this place Marathiam, which means double rebellion. You see that? So because America is rooted in double rebellion, okay, anti-Yahweh Shema Shai, anti his laws, his statutes, and commandments, anti-manhood, anti-family, anti-life itself, anti-righteousness, anti-order, anti-truth, and the Lord's getting ready to bring down fire upon this place. You see that? And the writing is all over the wall, okay, to show forth that this is what's getting ready to come down a pipe in this place. Judgment. You see that? And so, so all in all, us men of the Lord, the hopeful elect, okay? Let me see if I can find that scripture. A scripture that just came to mind. All right, let me slap your memory for a second. I want to find a scripture that just came to mind. Yep. All right. This is Psalms chapter 112. Psalms chapter 112, and I'm gonna start at verse 5. It says, "A good man sheweth favor and lendeth; he will guide his affairs with discretion." And this is talking about the elect man of the nation of Israel. Lord will not be at that number. Us, the whole elect, the remnant, the men of the Lord. It says, verse 6, surely he shall not be moved forever. The righteous shall be in everlasting remembrance. Okay. Verse 7, it says, he shall not be afraid of evil tidings. His heart is fixed, trusting in the Lord. All right. And let's read that verse 7 in NLT. It says, Psalms 112, verse 7 in the NLT. They do not fear bad news. They confidently trust in the Lord Yahweh Shema Shai to care for them. And you see, all the miseries that's being brought upon Babylon the Great America, from the farming situation that we were just going into, America's national security being more and more a threat from these different superpowers around the world, Russia, China, North Korea, so on and so forth, to the economic instability in this place, all the division. You see, all these bad, evil things that's happening in America, these things don't cast us down as the hopeful elect. They don't make us feel sorrowful seeing this place collapsing. No, these things make us glad. Okay, because what? As it went into, ultimately we trust in Yahweh Shema Shai, and we understand these things are all according to end time prophecy. We understand that it's a must that the Lord, cast down America more and more, Babylon the Great more and more, okay, for the kingdom of heaven to be ultimately established. So these things ultimately make us rejoice, seeing America waxing worse and worse, and seeing this world as a whole wax worse and worse and worse. You know, so as all these things are bad news to the world, okay, all these things happening around the world, all these situations happening here in the Babylon the Great, as all these things are bad news to these people in the world, they're good news to us, the hopeful elect. You see that? Because let's get this. Book of John. All right. Book of John, chapter 16. Book of John, chapter 16, and verse 20. It says, verily, verily, this is Yahweh Shai speaking. He says, verily, verily, I say unto you, that ye shall weep and lament, but the world shall rejoice. And that's what's been happening for this longest. Especially from 1619 up until now, basically. Okay, this world led by Esau Edom has been rejoicing at the fall of our people. Seeing our people disconnected from Yahweh Shema Shai. You see, seeing our people in a low, destitute state, catching hell. All right, being being afflicted by these curses, right? It says, John 16 verse 20, Yahweh Shai speaking, verily, verily, I say unto you, that ye shall weep and lament, but the world shall rejoice, and ye shall be sorrowful, but your sorrow shall be turned into joy. And now we, the hopeful elect, our sorrow is being turned into joy more and more in these outer days, as we get closer and closer to Yahweh Shai coming back. Because now, as we went into Baruch 4, these same places that's afflicted our people, that we serve captivity under, now the Lord is making these same places miserable. All right, America, Babylon the Great, along with its European allies, these same regions of the earth that's put hell upon our people and put our people into captivity, and so on and so forth. Now the Lord is casting down these same places and making these places miserable. You see that? Politically, economically, socially, education-wise, on different many fields. Okay, America, NATO, and the EU is being cast down and being made miserable, while we, the hopeful elect, our sorrow is being turned to joy, because all these things let us know. Let us know what? That hey, we're literally living and seeing the downfall of our enemies right before our eyes. Which, let's get that in the book of Sirach. I believe that's Sirach 25. If I'm not mistaken. Let's see. Let's lock it. Okay, wait for a second. All right, let's get it. This is Sirach chapter 25 and verse 7. It says, there be 9 things which I have judged in mine heart to be happy, and the 10th I will utter with my tongue. It says, a man that hath joy in his children, and he that liveth to see the fall of his enemy. See that? So hey, Akim out there, beloved Akim that's laboring, in doing the work and serving Yahweh Shema Shai in truth and sincerity. Hey, we're in these times. We're literally seeing the fall of our enemies right before our eyes. We're that generation that's going to see Yahweh Shai come back. And I wholeheartedly believe that in my spirit. We're that generation that's praising the Lord, that's singing this new song, that's getting ready to see Yahweh Shai come back and deliver us out of these different captivities, wherever the elect may be scattered out throughout the four corners of the earth. Okay, we're literally seeing the Lord put these curses, okay, slowly but surely upon these Edomites right before our eyes. We're seeing their precious America collapse and crumble and fall right before our eyes. Okay? And hey, we Akim that's of the hopeful elect, starting with the apostles and the bishops and the elders of Great Millstone, down to the least of us, we've been a major part of seeing this place collapse right before our eyes, because all we've been doing is what? Just simply preaching the word, prophesying the word, singing a new song, okay, casting down this stronghold of America and its beast system and its image and its mark, okay. We're literally speaking the end of Esau and you see the nation's rulership into existence. So we have much reason to rejoice at these evil tidings that's happening throughout the world, because we've been at the forefront of speaking into existence. Okay, so how much more are we speaking the victory over the system into existence as well? See, that's what's coming, the victory. All right, and let's see. All right, and let me just get one more and close it out. This is the book of Psalms, chapter 20 and verse 7. Matter of fact, I'll start at verse 6. Psalms chapter 20 and verse 6. It says, "Now know I, the Lord, Yahweh Ba'Shem Al-Shai, saveth his anointed." Okay, the elect, us the hopeful elect, the remnant. Lord will not be their number. It says, "He will hear him from his holy heaven with the saving strength of his right hand." And of course, we all know who sits at the right hand of the Heavenly Father Yahweh. All right, his begotten Son, Yahweh Shai. Okay, it says, verse 7, "Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we, all right, we the hopeful elect, will remember the name of the Lord, Yahweh Ba'Shem Shai, our power." Okay, verse 8, "They are brought down and fallen." Okay, who's the they? Our enemies. All right, these heathen nations, starting with the tabernacles of Esau, Edom. Okay, they are brought down and fallen, but we are risen and stand upright. And that's where we, the hopeful elect, are at in 2025. We're standing upright. See that? As the house of the wicked is waxing weaker and weaker, all right, the house of Esau, Edom, and his elites, hey, the house of David, us the hopeful elect, are waxing stronger, okay, in the faith, in the spirit, because what? We clearly see that our salvation draweth nigh than ever before. Matter of fact, I might end it off on that as well. And it says, verse 9, "Save, Lord, let the King hear us when we call." Let Yahweh Ba'Shem Shai hear us when we call unto him. Okay? Yahweh Ba'Shem Shai will most certainly hear us, the hopeful elect, when we call upon him in the day of Jacob's trouble. All right? Let me get this and end it off. It's the book of Romans, chapter 13 and verse 11. It says, "And that knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we believe." Hey, and that's just it. The day of the destruction of Esau, Edom, and Babylon the Great is nearer than when we believe, as well as the salvation of us, the hopeful elect, is nearer than when we believe as well. So pretty much just have to continue in the spirit, continue in the faith, continue being built up on our most holy faith, continue laboring, continue working out our salvation with fear and trembling, calling upon the names of Yahweh Ba'Shem Shai. And hey, Yahweh Ba'Shem Shai is going to take care of the rest of us for the hopeful elect. Lord will not be of their number, And so, Lord willing, this camp speaking was edifying. I want to say, Kal Halal Yamla, Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai, Ba'Shem HaRakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone, from whom I learned the truth from. And also peace and salutations to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. All right, and until next time, Kwam Yasha'Allah, Abad Ball, Shabbat Shalom. Okay, and Lord willing, till next time.